that year in the spring, he went to college and continued working, living at home. And somewhere in August, I was sitting at the dining room table. I think it was probably a Saturday, and Brandon walked through the dining room, and I something just spontaneously came through my mind. I thought, oh, I haven't heard him talk about registering for college in the fall. And I'm thinking it's time. It should be registered by now. It's starting soon, and so I asked Brendan, have you registered for college? And he says, no. I was waiting for a little bit more than that. That's all I got. And so I said, are you planning to go? And he says, well, I've decided that I'm going to apply for some scholarships to help me pay for school and then go again in the spring. And, okay, that's news to me. And I said, do you know when you need to apply? And he says, yeah, and walked off. And so, I'm thinking that wasn't the most healthy communication. And so Lori was standing in the kitchen. She overheard this. And I said, did he sound upset to you? And she goes, yeah, I did. So a few minutes later, he walks back through the dining room, and I say, Brendan, were you upset when I asked those questions about school? And he thinks about it, and he says, well, not really upset, but he said, I think I just feel that it's not okay for me to fail in your eyes. I'm thinking, oh no. This is news to me, and it's not good news, and I know that to go on this conversation is not going to be a fun conversation. You know how hard it is to face those kind of painful things? You don't want to. But I went ahead and I go, okay. I said, well, why is that? Why do you think it is that you feel like you can't fail in my eyes? And he thinks about it. He's really serious about this. He considers it. He doesn't just answer. He's not mad. And he says, I think it probably goes back to when we were young, and some of the ways you would talk to us, the ways you would treat us. And he says we'd be out, you'd be showing us how to use the lawn equipment, how to mow the lawns and stuff, and you'd show me how to use the weed or the trimmer, and then you'd show me how to do it, and then give it to me, and I'd do a little bit, and you'd take it back, and you'd do a whole bunch. It's like, I had to do it just like you, or it wasn't good enough. And I didn't remember that exact example, but I knew how I thought, I knew why I would do those things, and I began to explain myself. And it didn't help. And then I told him things like, well, I actually learned and was told that's a good way to model and show the person how to do it. And people show me how to do things and it saves time, all these good reasons, right? And it wasn't what he needed. It didn't help. And we were talking and nothing. We weren't connecting. It's like we were speaking two different languages. It was so frustrating. And I was feeling like everything I was doing was wrong. And I remember at one point I literally thought, well, maybe I'll just try to say something empathetic, and maybe that'll help, get us on the page. I did that, and that didn't help, because a few minutes later he says, Dad, I don't think you've heard one thing I've been trying to tell you today. And I'm just going, I literally inside I'm thinking, man, I know I can do this. I'm a counselor, and I do it all the time. They actually paid me quite a bit of money to do it, and they thank me for it. And my son says, I can't understand it. I literally got to the point, I did something I don't believe I've ever done before after the conversation. I stood up, I started to walk away, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I felt so frustrated, I just could not break through. And then he said something he had never said before. He says, Dad, don't walk away. Sometimes I fucked up. Well, I really thank God he was there. He didn't go away because of the language. And literally, I really heard for the first time, Dad, don't quit on me. Don't give up on this conversation. I screw up too. And it was actually the first time I felt like, oh, it isn't only me. It's messed up here. And so that helped, and I made my way back to the table cautiously and sat down, and he was sitting at the end of the table. And then, from out of the kitchen, a voice came from heaven. And Lori spoke up and says, why don't you do the steps to reconciliation. Oh, yes. We're supposed to do the things we teach. And so I began, and it was fairly simple because this was something that had happened earlier, and our relationship had really changed, and I had changed, and this wasn't happening, but it was still affecting him. This is the amazing thing. It's old stuff that is gone, and we think we're past it. Sometimes we still have to do something with it to really get it out of the way, or it keeps working. Don't ask me all the reasons why that's true, but we know it's true. So I began, the first statement was just something like, okay, Brendan, I think I see what I've done is I talked to you in ways, and I acted in ways that communicated to you that you had to do things just like me, or it wasn't good enough. You had to be just like me, or you were failing. And then I went on to the second step, and so you've gone through your life, all these, 20 years or so, wondering and worrying, am I really going to do it good enough? Am I going to measure up? Am I going to do as good as Dad? Is Dad going to be unhappy with me? And actually, I didn't say this out loud, but then I began actually remembering some things he would say, like he felt insecure about moving into adulthood. And so I never understood why, because he's intelligent, he's responsible, but this thing kept speaking to him. That just began going through my mind as I was saying these things. And I just said a few things, and I didn't even ask, is that correct? At that point, I went on to the third step, and I said, I feel really bad we've had to live with this all these years. And at that point, Brendan put his head in his arms and began to just sob on the table. And I went over and I put my arm around him, and after a while he sat up and he put his arms around me. He said, Dad, I love you. And I said, Brendan, I love you too. We didn't get to step number 4 of saying, I promise I'll do everything I can to stop this. I really feel like that was something that happened a long time ago that wasn't continuing to happen. And I didn't even say, will you forgive me? I really felt the forgiveness was given when he said, Dad, I love you. And I said, Brendan, I love you too. And it really changed our relationship. We didn't have a bad relationship, but it just brought a whole new level of connection and understanding. Probably one of the most amazing things to me that I observed over the next year or two is that there's times we'd be talking in our family, and I would be the target of the topic, and maybe there's something that somebody was upset at me about, and several times Brendan would speak up and literally explain me to the other members of the family. I'm kind of going, wow, that's better than I could have done. Seriously. I remember one time he's saying, I forget what the issue was, and he says, guys, he says, one thing I know about Dad is when he does something, he has a reason for what he does. I go, that's true. That's true. and here's the interesting thing, that by me taking the time to understand him, he actually understood me. He ended up understanding me a lot better as well. So you see how this goes way beyond just saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Yeah. How important it is to say, okay, I'm going to let myself see, understand, feel, and put into words how I hurt you. I'm going to really do the best I can to let you know that I don't want to do that, and it hurts me to hurt you, and I really care about the fact that I hurt you, and that you had to go through this. And that's painful, and it takes some humility. It takes some humility to really just simply and fully own this is what I did wrong. I would imagine for you, Kate, up here, you could have started to say, well, but Eric, you do these things too. We can look and say, well, you do those things, and that's why I do what I do. And it does not allow that. It's taking full responsibility, plain and simply saying, I do this, and I have done this, and I'm taking responsibility for it because it's not helpful, it's hurtful, harmful, and destructive in our marriage and our relationship, or with your children. How many of you thought of one of your children saying, man, that's probably something I could reconcile with my kids when I went through the example? One of the reasons why I use it is because it can be used with any relationship.